Let's get into NXT from April the 8th, 2025. So, only one note to discuss, really. The NXT audience has been targeting Swerve. Now, it hasn't been on television, but there's videos floating around on the internet of the crowd chanting, F you, Swerve, and Swerve, we coming for you. The we coming for you gimmick is a twist off of Booker T's infamous promo on Hulk Hogan. And it had become quite the interesting chant in NXT and other places. The Booker T Swerve Strickland feud has been pretty hot lately. So the audiences are now starting to get involved. I fully expect there to be some sort of negative chant for Booker T and the AEW audience, more than likely. But hey, I thought it was entertaining, and Booker T seemed to just kind of laugh it off. He also took the high road in his response by basically just telling Swerve that he should focus on the pay-per-views, and he kind of sort of told him to keep that same energy when he saw him, but we know he won't. But that was pretty much it, is that the NXT audience kind of wants to get at the AEW fans and the AEW audience, and a lot of the Tony fumbled, and now the Swerve we coming for you, F you Swerve stuff is starting to get a little hot over there, and I think that's entertaining. Okay, let's get into the show. Stephanie Vaquer planned to make her decision because she gets to handpick her opponent at Stand and Deliver. She planned to make her decision after the Jordynne Grace Jada Parker match, but this match got thrown out because Jada Parker smacked Stephanie Vaquer, and Stephanie Vaquer then hit Jordynne Grace with a belt by accident. This led to a brawl in which Giulia came out, actually pulled Stephanie from the brawl, got her licks in on Jordynne Grace and Jada Parker. And then she attacked Stephanie Vaquer, dropped her on her head, and put her boot on her face, then raised the title in the air, which, of course, fatal four-way matches. Oh, boy. Oh, Jesus. And that's, of course, what we get, because Stephanie Vaquer shows up later and tells Ava she wants to fight everybody. Giulia says she wanted a rematch, and she's going to get it, but it's going to be a fatal four-way contest. Everybody knows I hate these multiple man matches, but now Triple H's laziness is starting to infect NXT, so now I got a big, big, big problem. Huge problem. These are certainly two singles matches that you should just do. You should just have Stephanie Vaquer versus Giulia one-on-one. You should just have Jordynne Grace versus Jada Parker in a more decisive match, and then merge those streams later on. There's no reason to have a fatal four-way match. You literally do not need it. You do not need a fatal four-way match. This is got to be Triple H putting his fingers into my beloved NXT, and I won't stand for it. He's got to keep his grubby paws off of NXT. Get lost. Sean got it, all right? He's got this. We had the one match already. All right, we had that ladder match. I mean, it was a given. When Stephanie Vaquer won the title, I knew that was going to happen. It was a given. But this, completely uncalled for. The Jordynne Grace Jada Parker feud did not need to be settled. It could just continue, and then you can get more matches out of that. And Giulia, who I guess was injured, they don't say if she was injured or whether it was Visa, we don't know what it was, but she's just been walking around for 3 or 4 weeks, not doing much of anything and not being featured on TV. So she just waltzed into a rematch, which is fine, but it didn't need to be a fatal four-way match. It could have just been her versus Stephanie Vaquer one-on-one. She could have just requested it, and Stephanie said, and then Giulia attacked her, and then Stephanie says, okay, I choose you then, since this is what you want to do. But no, now we got a fatal 4-way match. Now we stuck with this. There's a belief, of course, that Giulia is about to get called up, and or Jordynne Grace is about to get called up. And I don't think either one of those things should happen. I think everybody in this match should stay in NXT, at least until June, because the main roster is plugged up. I mean, there's people up there in that main roster not given any chances whatsoever. And to just bring Jordynne Grace up or Giulia or whatever, and do what with them exactly? They're going to have to leapfrog a bunch of people. Now, look, I'm all about stars being treated like stars. But when Jordynne Grace is the only one, I think that you could believably bring up to the main roster and have her leapfrog a bunch of other people and be considered a top girl. Everybody else just be grinding it out. No, just leave them in NXT so they can get better and continue to build a division. And I know that there's people in NXT that you want to be able to push, that you want to do more with, but it's a little clogged right now. But that's the case, all right? The case is NXT has an embarrassment of riches. Leave it alone. Do what you can with the pieces you got on Raw and SmackDown, because you got plenty, and you still got more that you don't use. You don't just pick apart NXT, which they're going to do anyway, because I know the draft is coming up. I think it's I don't think they mentioned a post-WrestleMania draft, but I'm pretty sure there will be one. And they're going to end up picking some of these people apart anyway. Then you still got Roxanne Perez. While we're here talking about this, there will not be a last chance match at all for the Women's North American Championship thing, which is crazy because it seemed like a natural move. But this is just Ava being a bad general manager and Triple H being an idiot. But she said she has another idea. I don't know what that means, but I guess we'll see what she means by that. Roxanne anticipates it being some kind of tag team thing, but she doesn't have a partner, which is going to end up being Cora Jade, of course. But back to what I was saying. You have an embarrassment of riches in NXT. Roxanne Perez got called up for like 2 weeks and then got sent back. I would think that if you're going to call up anybody from NXT, it would be her. And then they also kind of sort of teased Lash Legend being called up. And then they pulled her back too. So I don't know what's going on, nor do I care. Leave all the good people in NXT. If you got to take somebody, take Roxanne. And if you want to take Jordynne Grace because of all her time in TNA, fine. But that's it. Leave everybody else here. Leave Stephanie and Giulia and Jada Parker alone. Hands off, please. But the reason we had this fatal 4-way is because Triple H is indecisive. He didn't plan anything. And now he's finger fucking NXT. No, we don't need you to do that. Let Sean cook. We don't need the sous chef trying to get involved with this. And look, I know that Triple H is the head over all creative in WWE. He's still got no business messing around with NXT. Leave NXT alone. Leave it alone. God damn it. All right. So Fraxium defeated Swipe Right. Two guys who look like they're fresh out of high school. Obviously, I've talked about Swipe Right before because they were on Evolve. And they are cringe. But they got that a bit of a Mean Street Posse in their presentation. If they go that direction with the characters, it might be okay. The issue that we got here is they're both physically underdeveloped, meaning they're both skinny and lacking in musculature. They look like kids. Now, these are the kinds of people that should be in NXT, if we're being honest. If they want to use them as just peripheral members of the NXT tag team division, fine. But I think they should probably just fit better and evolve while they grow and maybe bring them up later this year to NXT. So, but the match wasn't bad. Fraxium, of course, did everything they know how to do because that's all they do. And they won the match because they were the tag team champions of NXT. So then there's that. All right. So the culling. We got Sean Spears, who is a benevolent leader of the culling. Said, no, don't worry about everything that he's lost. It's always been about him uplifting the three of these people. And I shrugged at that. because, it just means that Shawn Spears is not interested in the North American title, which is great. It's dumb. It makes no sense that he wants no personal accolades, but it's great for me because now I don't have to watch Shawn Spears wrestle. So he wanted the team to focus on their individual achievements tonight, and both teams won. Izzy Dame qualified for the Women's North American Championship ladder match by defeating Ren Sinclair of the No Quarter Catch Crew. The match was pretty pedestrian, with the exception of the finish, where Izzy Dame hit a sky high, like a chokeslam, double chokeslam, and she actually got off the pin at the end. Now, I don't know if Ren Sinclair was supposed to kick out and she didn't, or if Izzy Dame was just so used to practicing the move that she hit the move and basically rolled away from it, but the referee counted 3 anyway. So, Izzy Dame won without trying to win. This is why you watch NXT, man. It's weird stuff like that. So Izzy Dame is now in the North American Championship ladder match. There was a time when I would have thought she would have been one of the favorites because she is quite interesting. Visually, she's a tall blonde, which, WWE traditionally has always been a fan of. But she's kind of a stiff in the ring. She's not a natural there. She needs some work. I'm also not feeling the Shawn Spears stuff, like her being involved with Shawn Spears. Because I don't like Shawn Spears, so it's putting a bad taste in my mouth. I did like her as the, I guess you could say, love interest of Tony D'Angelo for that short time that she was, like, bothering him. She seemed to fit that group as sort of the mob wife figure, and it showed a lot more of her personality. And this is where the dark gimmicks kind of fall apart, is that these dark cult-like gimmicks, often they cover up people who have some level of charisma. And I think Izzy Dame may have some charisma that is being sapped from her because her gimmick is to be this dark character when she probably is more natural being something else. But we're stuck with this. She's stuck with Shawn Spears. Everything he touches turns into manure, so it is what it is. Now, the other two guys in the culling, one of them is Nico Vance and the other one is Bull Buchanan's son. They defeated Hank and Tank. Now, Hank and Tank, they've been doing this weekly gimmick where they wrestle a match, they get some level of inspiration from some other tag team, and then they lose. They got talked down to by Swipe Right earlier, who said that they would give them advice once they win. And of course, they ended up losing, so it didn't matter. And then after Hank and Tank lost, Hank and Tank got a pep talk from the Street Profits, who told them to be themselves. I'm over the Hank and Tank push. I don't like Hank and Tank. I think they're boring. They're kind of generic. Them being forced onto the show every week gives me Gallus vibes. Like, I couldn't stand it. Like, Gallus are perfectly serviceable workers, but the company was basically plastering them on the show every single week, and you got literally nothing out of it. Hank and Tank have some level of charisma, but it reminds me of Otis squared. It's like if Otis was split into 3 people. Then you got Otis Prime, who is on Raw. Oh, yeah. And then you got Otis Jr., who will be Hank. And then you got Otis the Third, who will be Tank. And I'm like, we don't need 3 Otis characters, 3 fat, jolly, goofy guys. We just don't need that. If they were doing something else, then maybe. But Hank and Tank as a tag team do nothing for me. I don't really pay that close attention to their matches. I really don't. So I don't care about Hank and Tank. I don't care about their journey. I just don't give a shit about Hank and Tank at all, period. And it's because NXT tries to force them so much, I'm getting very negative on Hank and Tank. Usually I can just ignore it. But they're all over the show. And enough's enough. Enough's enough. Now, in terms of the culling, again, we got Shawn Spears shenanigans I'm not a fan of. The Nico Vance guy is the most interesting person in the group because he's the only one that has no previous history. So you're looking at this guy and saying, hey, he's a completely unknown entity, but it's a bad situation because he's not allowed to show any personality. He's just kind of dark, brooding, big guy. So there's that. I mean, there's not much more to it than that. But the culling wins to show that Shawn Spears has focused on his team, not on himself, which is fine. You know, whatever, who cares? There's going to be a tag team gauntlet match next week, to which the winners will face Fraxium for the tag team championships. I'm guessing that's the reason why Hank and Tank is being super pushed, is because Hank and Tank are going to be the guys that are going to win that match. I'm not a fan. I gotta say, look, the gauntlet idea, I think it's a shitty idea, considering they're doing it on SmackDown too. So it's like, not only are they on autopilot when it comes to all these multiple man matches, but now they insist on doing the same kind of matches on TV. Oh, we got to do a gauntlet match on SmackDown. Well, I guess we got to do one on NXT too. Why? Why can't you just pick the two best teams and have them wrestle each other? Well, because Fraxium has cleaned out the division, and nobody has more than one win in a row outside of Axiom and Nathan Fraser. Everybody else has lost at least one match in between winning one match. So now you got to have a team win a gauntlet. Sure, it doesn't matter, man. But I personally am a big fan of No Quarter Cash Crew because I'm a big fan of Tavion Heights. And I think that as a performer, he should be... Miles Bourne is pretty good too. But Tavion Heights, you're missing a lot with him not being a single star. You know, I think you're honestly missing something with him not being the focus of a singles division. And I think Miles Bourne and Charlie Dempsey could be a good tag team, considering Miles Bourne is sort of the high flyer and Dempsey can be the ground-based guy, and that could work. But No Quarter Cash Crew is the only team I can feel. You know, they're the only ones that I truly believe have something special. Everybody else, they're just kind of jabronis. You know, just nebulous jabronis at that. Now, maybe you try to squeeze Dark State into this. Maybe you try to squeeze Luca Crucifino and Stax. Now, Luca Crucifino and Stax, I like them, but, you know, they're going to be doing that parking lot thing with Dark State, which I'll talk about in a second. So I'm not sure they'll make it into this tag team gauntlet. Now, looking at the roster of tag teams in NXT, man, I can't tell you what the hell is going to happen there. It seems barren. It seems like you might have to pull somebody up from something or invite a TNA team. I don't know if there is a TNA team that you can invite to come over and help out, because the NXT tag team division has been completely and totally decimated by Nathan Fraser and Axiom over the course of about a year almost. So I don't know, but I don't want it to be the culling because they're boring, especially Bull Buchanan's son. He's very boring. All right, back to the Women's North American Championship. Sol Ruca defeated Jasmine Nix in the qualifier. Jasmine Nix was chosen as the representative for Fatal Influence, despite the fact that the other two have more experience. But Jasmine Nix is showing improvement. She worked this match and it wasn't too bad. Normally she's a girl who's probably didn't even watch this stuff growing up, so she's got to get used to it. But Sol Ruca is top tier in WWE. She's really good. She's a spot monkey for sure. She needs to work on transitions and actually wrestling. But in terms of doing stuff, Sol Ruca is top tier. And of course, she wins with the Soul Snatcher. But Jasmine Nix here was actually not bad. Her soccer kick, what they call the Nix kick, which is her finisher actually. Sol Ruca kicked out of it. But it was fine. It was a great kick. She also did a perfect plex into some kind of death lock. I was like, that was interesting. She must have really practiced that. Like really practiced that joint. But she didn't win, clearly. And so now she goes into the loser's bin. But Sol Ruka being in the match is great. Sol Ruka, I think, is the favorite to win the Women's North American title. It seems like she probably should have won it last time. The only issue I have here is they're still doing this stupid tag team with Zarya, which I'm not feeling. And also, for a short time there, it felt like they were going to turn Sol Ruka heel, where they had her a little bit more with an attitude, a little too cocky. And then they kind of backed off of that, and now she's back to being, friendly with Zarya. They need to make a decision about Sol Ruka's direction. They need to let her talk, show some personality. This tag team thing was supposed to show her personality, which it kind of is, but it's also, in my opinion, diminishing Zarya, who, again, was brought in to be a killer, and they're not doing that. You see that push that Megan Bain got? That's what Zarya should have got, except minus the pinfall loss. Zarya should be, going in there, murking girls and looking like a beast. And then she should be the North American champion. But now I'm not even looking at her as a favorite, even though she is undefeated, because they have, I guess, diminished her and humanized her character so much. But I think that Sol Ruka is the favorite. And I think it's probably better if Sol Ruka wins and then Zarya turns on her. Then it might make all the sense in the world why they spent so much time forcing these two together. Is the moment Sol Ruka becomes more successful than Zarya takes her head off. I think that would be perfectly fine. That would be great, actually. But I don't know if they got that kind of movement in their soul at this point. Shawn and Triple H, they're kind of they like everybody to have fun, I suppose. That's kind of the old Vince McMahon thing. Let's go out there and have fun. Everybody's having fun. Speaking of the North American title, however, Ricky Starks ain't having no fun. He came out and talked about shattering Ethan Page's ego. Said that he did the same thing Ethan Page did, but better and bigger. And that since Ethan Page want to ruin his moment, he called him out. But instead, we got this parade of jabronis. Lexis King, Eddie Thorpe, Wesley, just Ethan Page. All these guys just came out. We're going to truncate this. Lexis King wants extra gold because even though he's got a championship, he wants the North American title. Eddie Thorpe thinks that the North American title is his birthright because the championship represents his people. And Wesley thinks that the title peaked when he had it, therefore he should be the champion. Eddie Thorpe then took aim at Lexis King by calling him a greedy white man who needs to focus on what he's got already. And the internet took that and ran with it. That joint hit the scene like a grenade. All the woke wrestling fans who are big fans of the race issue being brought up are like, yeah, this Native American guy, he's standing up for his people. Lexis King, who is from like Cincinnati, which is not like a rich city, kind of white trashist, especially if you know his real family history. Him being called a greedy white man is pretty hilarious, bro. It kind of fits his gimmick because his gimmick is that he's a Nepo baby who is trying not to be a Nepo baby. If you want to have these two guys feud, it should play into it. Where Lexis King talks about his mom being on drugs and not having all the kinds of opportunities to go to Japan like Eddie Thorpe did and studying dojos and all that kind of stuff. He had to get it out of the mud, despite who his father was. That could be an interesting angle if they chose to go that way on the race issue between Lexis King and Eddie Thorpe. But if this is just a throwaway, Eddie Thorpe plays the race card because Eddie Thorpe always plays the race card. It's been about the race card for Eddie Thorpe for a while now. I'm not too upset about it. It don't really matter. I would have... But I do appreciate people who say you can only get away with this when you say it about white people. If he would have called Wesley a DEI North American champion, it would be a very different reaction to what he said. It wouldn't be an overwhelmingly positive pop-like reaction. It would be people screaming from the heavens that they're trying to ruin Wesley and why do they got to do this? It's racist and all this kind of stuff. It's not racist when it happens to white people, though. But it's interesting. Anyway, let's skip ahead. Ethan Page ends up attacking Ricky Starks as everybody's arguing. And while Ricky is down, the rest of these guys start to brawl. And then they announce yet another Fatal 4-Way match. It is going to be Ethan Page, Wesley, Lexis King, and Eddie Thorpe in a Fatal 4-Way #1 contenders match next week. Now, at least they decided to make a #1 contenders match rather than make it a Fatal 5-Way or something stupid like that at the pay-per-view. Now, I'm going to guess that Ethan Page is going to win the match because that seemed like the more appropriate setup. And also, Ethan Page, I don't think has won a match since he lost to Javon Evans. So he needs a win. But you can easily bridge the Eddie Thorpe, Lexis King story out of this if that's what you wanted to do. But Ethan Page is kind of one note for me. I'm not a fan. I actually am more interested in if it was Wesley, but Wesley hasn't been making any waves either. He's been spending most of his time on TNA. Lexis King, no, Paul. Nah. Eddie Thorpe is also a nah. So I think by definition of the least embarrassing person in this match, it had to be Ethan Page, I guess. But a very close second would be Wesley. But I'm going to imagine that Ethan Page is going to win. So we go into the main event. The main event. Dark State, which was Deion Lennox. Cutler? What the fuck is this? For James Cutler? Brandon? No, not Brandon. Mark? I don't know. And Shaquan Sugars versus Trick Williams, Obafemi, and Javon Evans in the main event. Very solid main event, actually. I paid close attention to the members of Dark State because I'm not that familiar with them. But I've seen Deion Lennox before, and this Cutler guy, he's been on Evolve. He was also on Legends of Future Greats. My brother is a fan of that show. I haven't watched it. But Saquon Sugars is somebody I never really paid attention to. He did not make a good first appearance where he's wearing the Andre the Giant Big John Stud one strap. Look, I understand that you want to look different. But the days of the one strap over the shoulder is over. Please get rid of that. You look like a jabroni. You really do. He took hella bumps, though. He took some really nasty bumps in this match. A really crazy back body drop, and they were throwing him around. He worked very hard. I think that it was clear that they wanted to make sure he was the focus of the match. That's why he took all these bumps. That's why he spent most of the time in the ring. When the match was over, he was sweating more than anybody else because he was in there working. The other two guys, there's not a lot expected out of them. And I think mostly because Deion Lennox never worked on the indies. And I'm not sure about that Cutler guy. But Sugars is a guy who's been on the indies for a while. He's had a bit of a name on the indies. So they're really putting him to the test. On the other side, however, of course, Javon Evans worked most of the match because, he's the smallest guy, the youngest guy. So they put him in there to take all the bumps and, get beat up a little bit. At one point in the match, the turning point, Obafemi tosses Saquon Sugars into Trick Williams for no apparent reason. Trick Williams then gets into Obafemi's face and they fight while Javon is on the ring apron. He ends up tagging himself in, trying to win the match and stop Dark State because that's his focus. But it doesn't happen. Instead, he gets a super triple powerbomb, which was kind of botched. Now, the setup for this thing it looks decent. It looks like they're going to do the Dudley Boys finisher, where the one is sitting on the rope or the turnbuckle, one lifts them up, and then they put it in the powerbomb position and they jump off. That's what it looks like. But they decided to do an alley-oop powerbomb, pretty much, where two people lift and toss, and the other one would just pull them down with the powerbomb, kind of. But instead, it looks like an elbow dropped because Sugars didn't get into a powerbomb position. So anyway, that was the finish. It was kind of botchy, but it was all right, ultimately. I know what they were going for. They were trying to elevate the shield bomb, which is, they probably shouldn't do that. just do it a normal way where you just place the guy on the other guy's shoulders and let him fall off with the powerbomb. That'll be better. You don't have to elevate everything. Sometimes simple is better. So after the match, there is a brawl between all of the guys who are going to be fighting for the title. And Dark State is celebrating. And all of a sudden, Stax is on the screen. And he challenged them to meet the Tony D'Angelo family in the parking lot next week. So Dark State has a date with the Tony D'Angelo family in the parking lot next week. That ought to be interesting. Continuing the Shield parallels, you see that the Dark State are feuding with main event guys who are put together in a super team, and they beat them, and then they start feuding with other stables. Just like, the Shields ended up feuding with the New Day, ended up feuding with the Wyatts. Now they're going to be feuding with the D'Angelo family, and maybe even feuding with like Chase U, and then eventually feuding with the Culling and a bunch of other stables that they got floating around in NXT as a way to keep them motivated. But I think they should quickly move them to the tag team championships, because Dark State needs to cash in on the positive momentum that they have. And since they're one of the only teams that haven't been beaten by Axiom and Nathan Fraser, I think they do need to go in that direction. I don't know which two you pick. Maybe you do a Freebird rule where any two members of Dark State can wrestle for the tag team titles. But I think that's what they should do for a Dark State. Once it kind of settle them in for a little while. But otherwise, it's okay. Now, the D'Angelo family, I think, is a really fun group. Yes, they've been around for a long time. Tony D'Angelo's been there for 4 years. I think he came in 2021 or 2022, maybe 3 years. I'm talking about like being visible. I think it's been 2022 when he came in, right? So who knows how long he's got left in NXT, and whether they even plan to bring him up ever. Or is he going to be one of these NXT guys who just floats around for 6 years like Wes Lee? In any event, it's a good move to give Dark State the rub by working with Tony D'Angelo, because he's so over. So he's less over than Trick and Oba, but he's over enough that a match with him isn't something that people are going to go to the bathroom over, Like, nobody's going to skip what he's doing. So this could work. Also, why is Dark State, a sausage party? Why are there no women in Dark State? Where the hoes at? I shouldn't have said that. But, and especially since I'm looking at Evolve and there's quite a few girls in Evolve, I'm thinking, like, why you didn't use her? Like, there's a couple of females in Evolve who are regular NXT talent who WWE recruited and brought in, who have probably been there for a little while. And, I'll give you one example. I wouldn't put her in Dark State, but Tyra May Steele, who is Tamara Mensah Stock, the Olympic gold medalist. She's on Legends and Future Greats. And she cut a really fantastic promo on Bubba Ray Dudley, who said she smiles too much. She cut a really great promo, heartfelt, had tears in her eyes, everything. She's been under contract for 2 years. 2 years. And I don't want to go through like Evolve and LFG and look at some of these people who have been in the company for multiple years. I don't want to do that. She's a good choice for a television show because she's an Olympic gold medalist. Just like, Elijah Holyfield was a good pick for that show because he's Evander Holyfield's son. So you want to show that WWE superstars come from all walks of life. They could be Olympic gold medalists, or they could be the sons of famous boxers or whatever. Never mind that Evander Holyfield got like 14, 15 kids. So it's not like he's nothing special about, I shouldn't say that. But he's got good genetics. He looks fine. But there's a lot of talent, that you could use in Dark State if you wanted to expand the group. But I think 4 is enough. But maybe 1 female probably could really help. Mainly because none of these guys they really stand out. They don't have a lot of charisma. And a girl could really stand out and bring something new if she's got something about her that's spicy and special. But most of the guys, I really don't care about Dark State. It's kind of boring, actually. We've seen everything that these guys are going to do. We've seen it with the Shield already. We've seen it with the Nexus. So it's hard for me to get into Dark State. I just don't give a shit. So I'm making like add a girl or two to make it interesting. Okay. But now NXT. It's hard for me to get into some of the stories because of all these multiple man matches. And it's infested NXT. It's not good. But it's still a fun show. I didn't really care about most of the matches. I cared about Jordan Grace versus Jada Parker, Sol Ruka versus Jasmine Nix in the main event. I like those 3 matches. The rest of the show, however, mid. And I think mostly because the tag team titles are a wash and it doesn't really matter. It's really hurting the mid card. Ricky Starks is going to do what he can with the mid card, I guess, but it's just him. And they moved a lot of other interesting characters out of the way, like a Tony D'Angelo and a Javon Evans. They kind of moved them along. But there's still plenty of mid-carders in NXT, you know. So we'll see how it turns out. But let me know what you guys think, and I'll talk to you later.
Old non-aggression. Once that lesson sets in, you'll see a session. But you got an affection for no progression, regression. The best don't